Race family, guys, welcome to an episode that I am so crazy happy about. Not an episode, a series of episodes. I'm here with Jason, owner of ATF Speed, and we've laid out for you guys parts that, oh my goodness, these parts mean so much to me. I can't wait to pick into his brain and just share with you guys a lot of stuff that maybe you don't have access to on a regular basis, answer a lot of your top questions. We're gonna do our very best to drop videos here from ATF Speed every Friday. And today, some of you guys may already recognize, but this is the A340. This is what I've ran in my Supra for the last 10 years with the help of ATF Speed that I'm so crazy happy for. So from the right of the counter to the left of the counter, we have from the stage 2 all the way to the 4.
Yep.
I told Jason, I said, man, a question that I get all the time is what stage should I buy? What's proper for my car at this power level? So I wanted to discuss all of that, have Jason discuss it for you guys today, as well as kind of just learn more about the A340.
Yeah, we can break it down in layman's terms where people understand it, I think.
I wanted to start by asking you, maybe when was the first time you got your hands on an A340?
It was a long time ago.
Was it? How long had you been building transmissions before you ever saw one of these in person? Or
it was actually pretty much right from the get-go. The
Okay.
first time I saw an A340 was from a Jeep. You know, it's called the AW4, and I noticed immediately that was one of the best manufactured transmissions I'd ever seen at the time, and you know, I fell in love with it right off the rip.
Definitely having the overdrive is a plus.
For sure. Having overdrive, having lockup, having such a small package.
Right.
The transmission's all rollerized. There's no, there's only a couple thrust washers that are plastic, but they're not really in a high thrusting area. Anything that's high thrusted is rollerized.
Got it. You say small package, and I recently went TH400, and
Yeah.
boy, did it take some massaging of the tonal right to fit that 400. It's
Yeah.
incredible. This thing definitely, for the power that I pushed through this, as fast as we went with this.
It's an amazing little package.
So,
Works.
Before we get to the stage 4 though, let's start with the stage 2.
So the stage 2, we I think we rated it 650, 600 or 650, something like that. So the stage 2 starts out obviously with all new bushings and new clutches, new bands, new sprags in the overdrive, and second gear would get the heavy duty sprag assembly. It would get a custom built dyno tested valve body, flushed, we dyno test and flush the solenoids.
Wow.
We dyno test our pressure control solenoid, and if it's bad, we have new ones that we can replace them with.
Nice.
A lot of people love to adjust the screw in the bottom of them. They think that really tightens up the shift, and what it does is it makes the solenoid quit working correctly.
Okay.
So we can dyno test them a lot of times, actually readjust that screw and get it back to working order, but sometimes we can't.
Got it.
So we have to replace it. So the main parts of the stage 2, obviously, right, is it gets the second gear sprag, it gets the billet 2024 aluminum piston for the forward clutch. We use accumulator pins with the springs instead of the pistons, and it would use a factory style direct clutch pressure plate for third gear, green clutches, high energy clutches.
And this is all for the stage 2. It sounds like
this
it's
is
a good
all-
amount of work. Yeah.
Yeah, the stage 2 is it's a pretty decent little transmission, but the stage 3 obviously is our claim to fame, and that's the one that we've pushed for years and years and years.
Right.
We came out with the stage 2 to fit the budget-minded racer out there that didn't need 1,000 horsepower capable tranny. You only needed a 600 or 700 horsepower capable
And there's
tranny.
lots of people like that.
There's a lot of people like that, and so that's why we came out with this stage 2, and it's a really good transmission. But for durability, if you're going to go over that 6 or 650, the stage 3 is definitely the way to go, because there's a lot more work that goes into a stage 3 than in a stage 2. So some of the additional things for the stage 3 are we use red clutches instead of the greens, which handle a lot more heat. We use the billet accumulator pistons instead of the pins. We make a custom thick pressure plate for the direct clutch, made out of a special steel that's really, really hard and does not bend. We have them laser cut out, and then we machine them to specs. We do a pan stiffener on that, which
And this is also a pretty recent modification as well.
yeah, I guess we've had it out for about a year or so, but we had a lot of complaints with the pans leaking, getting damaged from, because the pan is such a thin sheet metal that when you tighten it with a gasket, it bends the pan where it comes to the head of the bolts. So we came out with this to basically back up the pan and stiffen it up, right, and stop from damaging the pan.
I had somebody recently write to me. I guess he ordered this from me online,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't sure if to install it in between the pan and the transmission.
No.
Right. So I was like,
Right.
no, you're doing this wrong. He had it almost as like a spacer.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to put the
Right.
gasket against the transmission case.
We have an extra pan.
Yeah.
Mind if I grab that?
Yeah.
So this here.
So this pan shows what kind of the problem is. And if you can see it, I don't know if they can see it in the camera or not,
Right.
but everywhere there's a bolt, it's
Right.
got a big hump now.
I see it.
So what happens is over time it cuts the gasket in two, and it makes the gasket leak.
Right.
This pan's got a big divot right here where somebody pried it off with a screwdriver or something trying to get the pan off, because from the factory they're siliconed on,
I see.
which is great, right? But for us working on transmissions and servicing them and stuff like that, it's kind of a pain in the butt. We didn't really want to have to deal with this all the time, so
Right.
that's why we went with the better gasket material.
Right.
And then we used the pan stiffener. So
Yep, so you
the
have
way
a better
we-
gasket.
right.
Yeah, so the individual that I was referring to, I mean, I know you guys can visualize it at home, but they were putting they were
Right,
putting
so-
this almost as a spacer. They're putting it on top of the transmission like this, rather than install it from underneath.
Right. So imagine this going on the transmission.
Right.
And then obviously
So-
the pan would
so
go
like
on.
this?
Nope. And the pan would go on like this,
Oh, you're right. I messed that up.
right?
Yep.
And then
Yeah, feed this to the side here.
yeah, you got to make sure it's only one way it fits on there,
Yep.
right?
Right. Just like that.
Fits on just like that, and it comes with longer
Yep.
bolts. With
So
a,
now you can apply a lot more pressure.
right.
That's probably
We
a
got
lot
a
more
flanged
consistent
head.
all the way
We got a
through.
flanged head bolt instead of
Right.
just a regular hex bolt, and we're gonna be able to put that in there. And now we get a lot more clamping force on that gasket.
agree.
No more leaks.
And I've experienced leaks myself in my Supra, and you always want to be so fragile with these small 10mm bolts, so you kind of just slightly go around and get them all a little snug. But the second I got the pan stiffener, you definitely get a lot more confidence, but you don't even have to tighten them that hard, as them
Right.
all combined can really get that pan snug to the transmission. So that's a must, and you sell that as just an individual product as well.
Yeah, yeah. Everything 3 and 4 up gets this automatically. We do offer it to the public for obviously any A340 out there. If somebody wanted to do that, and it makes servicing the transmissions a lot easier now.
So
You
back,
don't
so back to the stage 3s. So we said maybe like 650 or so is a good reasonable amount for the stage 2.
Right.
The stage 3s, I want to say, I remember back in the day we would advertise like 800 or so
We
horsepower.
rate them somewhere between 800 or 900. I can't remember off
I've
the top
pushed
of
it
my
quite
head.
a bit more than that.
I've had a lot of people push them much farther. I think you did hold the record at like 1187
Power,
or 1185 at the
Yeah,
wheels.
something like that. I
But
went almost
what-
200 miles an hour in the standing half mile at like 1100 with my stage 3.
Right.
I went very low H, maybe even into like the high 7s. Maybe the 7s was like the 3.5 or so. We were already kind of experimenting with some of the parts that are now
Right.
offered in the stage 4.
Right.
But yeah, they were super capable.
But what we were
transmissions.
experiencing with the stage 3 obviously was we were losing second and third gear
Right.
over time.
Mhm.
We could, and for us, it's all about longevity.
Right.
Longer transmission lasts, the better it is
Right.
for everybody, right?
Right.
You want to get what you spent your money on, so we want to provide that for you. So we started making changes to the stage 3, making it much better for durability in second and third gear clutches. So like I said, the pressure plate was one of them, and it's actually both second and third gear that get thicker pressure plates.
Right.
There's other things that we do inside the transmission, a lot of TIG welding that we do, stiffening things up. We change some snap rings around to try to keep these pressure plates from coning.
Right.
When they're super thin like this one, and that hydraulic pressure pushes on it, your snap ring rides out here by the edge,
Mhm.
the clutch is in the center, and the hydraulic pressure will actually cone the pressure plate, and when it does, now you've got no more grip and the clutch pack wears out and it burns up. So we were trying to get second and third gear to handle that 1,000 horsepower abuse repeatedly and repeatedly. When we were going 840s or 850s, and we were getting 20 or 30 runs out of a tranny, that was great, but I'd rather get 50 or 60 runs
Right.
out of it. You know what I mean?
And this was my Supra back then. I remember when we were doing that 840, 850 or so times, we brought it here to ATF one time and put it on the scales that you had. The car was 3,600 pounds.
Yeah.
My car had a sound
remember that.
system. My car had a sound system. It had everything
Right.
and then some. It was crazy heavy. So over time, I've definitely cut a little bit of weight just to be a little nicer to all my Toyota parts. Toyota rear end, a lot of factory stuff that I had. But yeah, the stage 3 is an incredible transmission. And then we have the bad boy, the stage 4.
Yeah, the stage 4 definitely has a few more parts. So the
Right.
stage 4, we obviously came out with that planetary. This is the factory
After I
one.
heard a few of them. trying to-
Right, we broke a bunch of these, and it was damaging the planet and the output shaft every
Right.
time it did it, right? Because it would strip that spline, and make it fail. So that's when we came out, obviously, with the 4140 chromoly steel. We actually heat treat the splines before we assemble them. Made the back paste. This is also out of 2024 aluminum, which is what we were trying to do, is get a little bit of weight out of it, but we wanted something that we could service, so we can actually take this apart and service the thrush washers that are in there if we need to later on down the road. That was a huge improvement. The other big improvement was this second gear piston that we came out with another 2024 aluminum second gear piston, different release springs, and a different spring retainer for the second gear. And that added 890 pounds of clamping force to the second gear clutch pack.
That's wild.
And that takes us back to that, you know, can we get 50, 60 runs? How many runs can we get? So as soon as we went to the stage 4, right, we didn't burn second and third gear clutches anymore.
Right.
We started breaking shafts. And,
right.
I mean, at least we got it. It's not slipping, right?
No,
so
100%.
We fixed the hydraulics and the clutches and all that, and got all that working. Then we started breaking hard parts, and you know, and I think when we were all said and done, you broke just about everything we could break and see. But you know what? That's super valuable to the end user.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we got to learn a lot about this transmission in a very short amount of time. You know what I mean? So, you know,
I agree. So my experience with the Stage 4 transmission, you guys write to me all the time on Instagram, on my YouTube videos, and will ask for my feedback and my experience. I'm yet to ever burn clutches on a second gear, third gear, any gear. I've never experienced any sort of slippage, which goes to what you're describing now.
Right.
Anytime I would take this transmission out of the car, for the most part, I broke an input shaft, which I only ever broke when I was like in a finals, or I really leaned on the car.
Right.
And
for the record,
my car was seeing close to 60 pounds of boost in first gear and 150 shot of nitrogen. So under that amount of stress, yes, I would break the factory input shaft, but I could repetitively run low 8-second runs, run in the 7s, which again is just incredible. And then on the weekend, I could have my little daughter in the back seat, my wife with me, and we would take this car everywhere. The overdrive is an incredible feature. I mean, compared to, forget a power glider, compared to a power glider, even a 400, having, like you described earlier, a small package,
driving anywhere
the
you want to go.
cruisability, the thing would just shift itself. Man, I know when I bought my Toyota Supra, like every young boy, I was 21 years old, I wanted a manual. My very first car when I was 15 years old was a stick shift. I didn't even know how to drive it home. I struggled. I almost burnt the clutch on my drive home, that's how bad it was. But when I bought my auto Toyota Supra, people would knock me. I would go to car shows or car meets, and, oh, you have an automatic, oh, it's not a 6-speed. The truth is, what we did with this transmission, I mean, I feel like the second we started having a little bit of success, I set my eyes on going faster than any 6-speed Supra had ever done. At the time, the fastest, and even until today, is like a 780 something on a 6-speed manual Supra. We went a 752 at 186 miles an hour with the Toyota transmission, with the car that still has AC, powered windows, a heavy car.
Yeah, I think they're still 3,400 something.
Yeah, it's like 3,400 pounds. So I love this package. I love the transmission. If you guys have a Lexus GS300, IS300, I mean, if you guys have a 2JZ VVTi, because you work on those as well.
Right, that's what this valve body, believe it or not, is right here. That's a VVTi.
Okay.
And we do work with these, and what's nice about these is they have a couple extra solenoids on them that if you have the proper computer system, you could use paddle shifting, and obviously it would have engine braking when you downshift it with the paddles.
Nice.
You can use paddle shifting with a non-VVTi, but when you downshift it, just goes through, you know, free spinning the engine. Doesn't have engine braking, so it's not really any fun. It just doesn't really do what you want it to do. The idea is obviously to have engine braking, you know.
And then I was going to say the last thing is, any one of these packages, if you buy the Stage 2, the 3, the 4 from ATF Speed, before this product is shipped to the customer, I've seen you have a valve body dyno, you have an engine dyno, or transmission dyno, I should say.
All right, we start dynoing the solenoids.
Okay.
And we make sure all the solenoids work, because that's the first thing. It's controlled by a computer. So if we can verify that the solenoids do what they want to do, and there's a lot of working parts on these solenoids. If you look inside these things, you got an adjustment screw with a spring, and it's got a valve inside. So there's things that can wear out in here, right, over time. And this one here, being the EPC, or electronic pressure control, controls the line pressure in the training.
Right.
It's very critical to getting the drivability out of that training to work the way it's supposed to work. You know,
the longevity, everything's going to be determined by that little guy. That little guy's not doing what he should be doing.
There's a big problem.
Right.
Very big
Wear
problem.
off the clutches.
Right. So one of the biggest issues that we've encountered with the A340 over the years, right, is AEM. All AEMs, the factory tunes, don't raise the line pressure in the transmission, and what it is the way it's controlling this solenoid.
Okay.
Right, this solenoid works at a duty cycle that starts out about 55 to 60% duty cycle when you're idling and you put the car into gear, right? And that 55-60% duty cycle means your line pressure is the lowest it can be in the transmission at that time. So it might be 100 to 120 psi. Whereas when you floor it and the TPS is 0, we should be at 0% duty cycle on the EPC solenoid, and that should give us maximum line pressure, which would be over 200. You know what I mean? So there's over 100 psi of sweep in that solenoid. It makes a huge difference in the way the transmission works, the way it shifts. You know, so what we try to do is anybody that has an AEM and wants to send us their tune, we'll make the changes for you and send it back.
That's awesome.
Or we can send you a picture of a graph that we've done before and try to show you how to set your TPS up, your TPS and duty cycle for that solenoid to get the pressure to be where it needs to be. So typically by 40% TPS with a turbo car, we're already at 0% duty cycle. We're already at full pressure, because even at 35-40% of throttle, that car can make some decent power.
Right.
You know, the turbo spools, it doesn't care where the throttle is. So we try to be a little aggressive on that.
So you start by dyno testing.
Yeah, so we dyno test that, and then once all those are working, then we build the valve body. We put everything on the valve body. We put it on the dyno, and we run the whole thing with a computer system, and we make sure that all the function is working correctly, that we're getting all the pressures that we want. We can make sure our torque converter charge pressure is right. There's a lot of things that we can do with this thing. And then after we do all that, right, then we put the whole package together, and then we put the transmission on a transmission dyno, and we dyno it.
Check line pressure.
Yeah, check line pressure. Right. We use a Fuel Tech FT600 to do all our computerized stuff now. Nice. Which makes it real simple. We can run through a lot of tests with that. Also gives us the ability to data record it. So
this is awesome. You knocked it out of the park. Yeah, this is sweet. I don't think it gets any easier than this, guys.
A couple other things I want to talk about real quick was,
right.
you know, a lot of people don't know what to do with coolers and their cooler lines, right? So a lot of people question what coolers and what cooler lines and stuff like that. So what we have here is a stainless steel fitting made by Russell that you can convert your cooler lines to a -6. That's Russell part number 640381.
Yep.
And what that would do is you would take your original line out and you screw that in, and now you can hook a number 6 line up to it. Right, now you run a -6. So
that's awesome.
On the cooler side, we recommend, you know, a big cooler like a B&M, something, or Derail, something with a fan on it, that will blow on it.
Yeah, so I actually bought a B&M super cooler with the fan here from you 6+ years ago, and that's still the cooler that I run till today.
Right. We highly recommend running the fluid through a cooler in the radiator if you have it like factory. But a lot of people go to an aftermarket radiator, and it's a big mistake. It's a huge mistake to do that, because the water will cool down that tranny fluid faster than air, no matter what. You know what I mean? I see. So if you're beating on your car and it's running through the radiator, and you're making a couple passes,
it'll stay far more consistent.
You know, racing out at
Mexico.
Mexico. In the middle of the night, you can pull over and let it idle for like 1 or 2 minutes, and the tranny temp will come right back down, and then you can shut the car off and give it 15-30 minutes or something like that, and then do it all over again. Whereas if you don't have that water cooling it down, it can take like sometimes it won't even cool down when it's idling. You know what I'm saying? It'll just sit there and maintain heat. It just won't cool down. The water will suck the temp out real fast.
Right, so one last thing that I thought of, whenever I would install one of these transmissions in the car, let's say the customer chooses a stage 3 or 2 or 4, it's now installed in their car. Let's walk them through maybe first startup. How many quarts of oil should they put in this bad boy?
First startup for us. So what we do after getting done installing everything into the car, we put 4 quarts of transmission fluid in it. Now before we stab the torque converter into the transmission, we always try to get a half a quart or something into the converter. Sometimes it takes a long time to get a whole quart in there. But we try to just get something in there so it's wet, so that initial startup, there's oil slinging around inside there. So the way that we like to do it is, depending on how well you can flush your cooler system, is as soon as we fire the car up with it on jack stands, the wheels off the ground, e-brake off, we put it in reverse, and we let the car idle in reverse.
I would always do that. You taught me that trick years ago.
Right.
Every time I always do that.
And then we start pouring, the fluid into the transmission, and then start running it through the gear. We do that for a couple minutes, and then we'll then we'll start running it through the gears. And the reason we run it in reverse before we run it into drive is because it gives it a chance for the fluid to go through the cooler system and rinse all that stuff out and get it all back into the pan before the valve moves and it excites the entire valve body. So in reverse, we're only going to maybe a third of the valve body. So we prefer to do that. It's just a little trick we learned over the years to help get some of the contamination that might be in your cooler into the pan, into the filter, trapped before it goes everywhere in the valve body.
I like it. That's awesome, guys. This will conclude episode 1. I hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to do our very best, like I mentioned earlier, to every Friday bring you guys in-depth information on all these products. Whatever questions you guys have, write them down below. Whatever products you want us to review next, your Power Glides, your 400s. Jason and ATF Speed over the last many, 15, 20 years they've been working on transmissions?
My entire life.
For a long time, man. He's a beast.
Since before I had a driver's license.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I trust this man with my transmissions, with my car. Whatever questions you guys have, whatever you'd like to see reviewed next, let us know in the comments below. But we look forward to doing this. Hope you guys enjoyed. Catch you guys soon.